to start the session with a recitation of the Holy Quran. Assalamualaikum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح رأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you, Brother Buddha, for your recitation of the Holy Quran. As has been stressed multiple times in these majalis, in this period of Muharram specifically, we need to re-establish our relationship with the Holy Quran and with the Ahlul Bayt, and there is no better place to do it than these majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Now I'd like to invite our next Naha Khan, our next Marsiya Khan, which is Brother Zuhair Kazmi. So Zuhair, are you ready to start?
Assalamu alaikum, can you hear me?
Wa alaikum assalam, Zuhair, I can hear you perfectly.
जब झूला खाली पाया बानों ने कहा रो रो कर जब झूला खाली पाया बानों ने कहा रो रो कर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर ऐ नूर नजर ऐ लख्त जिगर कुर्बान हो तुझ पे मादर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर जब तेरी उम्र के बच्चे गुजरेंगे निगाह से मेरी जब तेरी उम्र के बच्चे गुजरेंगे निगाह से मेरी ढूंढेंगी तुझे झूले में मादर ये तब कह कर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर जब झूला खाली पाया बानों ने कहा रो रो कर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर ख्वाहिश थी मेरी ये बेटा तुझे चलता हुआ देखे माँ ख्वाहिश थी मेरी ये बेटा तुझे चलता हुआ देखे माँ इस छोटी उम्र में बेटा तू सो गया बन में जाकर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर जब झूला खाली पाया बानों ने कहा रो रो कर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर तेरा अक्स नजर आता था पानी में उसे असगर तेरा अक्स नजर आता था पानी में उसे असगर पानी में पीऊं कैसे अम्मा कहती थी सकीना अक्सर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर जब झूला खाली पाया बानों ने कहा रो रो कर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर सज्जाद लहू रोता था ज़ैनब भी तरफ जाती थी सज्जाद लहू रोता था ज़ैनब भी तरफ जाती थी जब धूप में बैठी माँ के आता था ही होंठों पर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर जब झूला खाली पाया बानों ने कहा रो रो कर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर मेरी जान कहाँ हो असगर सलवात
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. May Allah bless you, Brother Zahir, for your wonderful recitation of that stones. And I would also like to invite our next Soz Khan, Marcia Khan, Brother Kumail Rizvi. Kumail, are you ready? Assalamu alaikum. Oh, my mistake. Sorry, I've invited the wrong brother. So bear with me a second. Brother Jari Abbas.
Assalamu alaikum. Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein, Hussein al-Gharib, al-Gharib, al-Hussein, Hussein al-Shahid, al-Shahid al-Hussein, Hussein al-Gharib, al-Gharib, al-Hussein, Hussein al-Shahid, al-Shahid al-Hussein. Dohai, dohai, Khuda ra dohai, ये दश्ते बला में है कैसी तबाही बहाया है किसने ये खूने मोहम्मद क़यामती ढाई है किसने लाही जवानों बुजुर्गों को मारा गया है शहीदों में शामिल है नन्हा सिपाही हुसैन अल-गरीब अल-गरीब अल-हुसैन हुसैन शहीद शहीद अल-हुसैन किया जश्न बरपा यूं अहले हवस ने शहीदों के लाशों पे डंके बजाए जला डाले आले मोहम्मद के खेमे सकीना के मुंह पर तमाचे हैं मारे, जो बीमार था उसका बिस्तर न चोरा, नबीजादियों पर पिडुर्रे चलाए, हुसैन अल-गरीब अल-गरीब अल-हुसैन, हुसैन शहीद शहीद अल-हुसैन। उठी अपने मरकद से बिनते मोहम्मद, सियाह शब की चादर में चेहरा छुपाकर, गई करबला में तो उसने ये देखा, है बूसीदा कुर्ते में कलाश बेसर, बदन सारा तीरों से चलनी पड़ा है, लहू में है डूबा हुआ सारा पैकर, हुसैन अल-गरीब अल-गरीब अल-हुसैन, हुसैन शहीद शहीद अल-हुसैन। सलवात अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद वज्जिल फरजहुम।
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. There's a brother who's asked in the chat about reciting a surah, and we mentioned this before as well. We'll put the number in the chat. You can contact Brother Daniel Asad. There's still a couple of majalis left if you wish to recite. Surely we can find a way to fit you guys in. But please contact Brother Daniel Asad. His number should be in the chat. And today we're pleased to have Agha back with us. So without further ado, I would like to invite Hujjatul Islam and Muslimin, Sheikh Hamza Sodagar, to begin the Majlis. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah jami'an. I apologize for the mishap yesterday. We had 2 nights of Shab Bidari, and I didn't think it was going to get to me, but I guess last night, the night before, it did get to me, and I did not wake up in time for this majlis, and inshallah, you all forgive me. A'udhu billah minash shaitanir la'inir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa habibi qulubina wa tabibi nufusina wa shafi'i dhunubina Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad wa ala ahli baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin al-ma'sumin al-mukarramin al-muntajabin la siyama baqiyat Allah fil aradhin. روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening and the return of our Imam, let's recite the salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For his health and well-being, let's recite the second one louder. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, each and every one of us becomes a true and close companion of that Imam. Let's recite the third one even louder. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. One of the things that the companions that wish to be the companions of the 12th Imam, or the Shia, the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, the Azadar of Imam Hussein, who want to be companions of the 12th Imam, need to consider if they are living in the 21st century as opposed to, and in comparison to those who lived in the earlier centuries, is that in these centuries there are certain teachings of Islam, certain teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, certain teachings of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that have become a lot more widespread. We live during the time that, as opposed to what we generally notice in many wrongs, many sins, many deviations being public, being made public, advertised, normalized, and so on and so forth, which is somewhat true. We see these sins, we see the push toward accepting wrong views. There is a lot of effort in promoting atheism, which is the foundation of all wrong, disbelief in God entirely. There's a lot of effort and there's a lot of money put into advertising various sins, normalizing sins as being okay, like the whole LGBTQ, the emphasis on that. These are things that we see. It should be seen. We should notice and recognize this wrong that's happening. And as companions of the 12th Imam in the 21st century, we've got to address those matters. We have to make sure that within the community of believers, at least, we have to make sure that in the Majalis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, for our next generation, we make it clear that what is being said regarding these matters, the normalization of sin, calling it natural, saying people are born with it, saying that's a right that people have, and so on and so forth, these are all fallacies. These are all lies. It is not true that God created a person to be gay, for example. That's not true. That is a big lie. We need to clarify those things. We need to talk about them. And a follower, a companion, a soldier of the 12th Imam in the 21st century needs to see these things, address them the way they should be addressed, deal with them the way they need to be dealt with. However, there's an aspect that is not noticed as much. In fact, I think mostly we don't notice it. And not noticing this is going to have negative impacts. And I'll try to elaborate on that. There's one person that I've seen noticing this, and actually I learned from him. What I'm talking about today is something learned from him, and that is Azakhana-e. He's the only one that I've seen saying this, and I had to spend some time to wrap my head around this concept and look around to see if I see what he is saying, if I also notice, recognize that this is a truth, this is a reality. And the more I looked, the more I analyzed, the more I observed, I realized that it's definitely 100% true. And I still am noticing as time goes by how true that statement is. What is it? As we said earlier, to notice that the values that were promoted, that were taught by Islam, by the Holy Prophet, by the Ahlul Bayt, those values are on the rise. Those values have become global or globally accepted, or at least more globally accepted than ever before. These are some fundamental values that we have not heard as fundamental values before, or at least some of them we have not heard. So there's two things that need to happen in this session, and I'm going to try to do both of these briefly to give you a lead. Otherwise, each of them deserves an independent few hours of discussion, perhaps. But it's a lead, giving you a lead so that you can work on these. First, identifying those values, and then and clarifying that these are Islamic values. That's going to take a little bit of time. And then talking about what it means for them to be accepted on a global scale. The values, I'm not going to state all of them, but these are social values. Social values that are fundamentals of being able to have a social movement that would lead to the establishment of the government of the 12th Imam. Without this, without these values being accepted by people on a global scale, from the east to the west, without that, these values being accepted and adopted by people throughout the world, the concept of establishing the government of justice of the 12th Imam on a global scale would be impossible. And therefore, when we see that these values have become global values, accepted pretty much across the globe, pretty much to a lesser or greater degree in different parts of the world, adopted and practiced to a lesser or greater degree in different parts of the world, when we see that that has happened, although it hasn't reached the ideal level, but it has happened to a degree, then that can show us that the progress that the 12th Imam has made in moving toward his objective is great. He has made a lot of progress. He has come very far from where we were as people throughout the globe 1,000 years ago, when this process, at least his leadership, started, and where we are today. I'll name some of these values, and these are not the only ones. I will, I think, go with two values. One, which is, I think, easier for us to process as a value, and I won't spend too much time. I'll just, in terms of explaining how this is an Islamic value. It's clear to you that this is an Islamic value. So I won't spend any time doing that. I'll just talk about how this is, how things have changed in terms of this being a globally accepted value in the way that it helps with the movement of the 12th Imam and the establishment of the government of justice. And that value is justice. Justice. Justice is clearly an Islamic value. I don't think anyone here has any doubt regarding that matter. Justice is what Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh is known to have become shaheed, and people had issues with him because of his justice. Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi, in his advice and his will to his son, says, Kun lil-zalimi khasman wa lil-mazlumi awna. Be opposing or oppose the unjust person, the one who is oppressive, the one who is transgressing, the one who is violating the right of another, and be a helper to the one who is being violated, to the one who's being oppressed. The verses of the Quran emphasize this concept, this value. Many of the verses of the Quran emphasize this. One of them is in Surah Al-Ma'idah and says, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Don't allow the conflict that you have, the violation that others have caused against you. Others have violated you, others have mistreated you, others have done things where your relationship with them is not a good relationship. You have bad blood between you. Right? Don't allow that to prevent you from justice. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ. شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ is the wrongdoing toward you. Others have mistreated you. A people have mistreated you. Right? So it's them mistreating. There's no question. The verse is very clear. They mistreated you. But don't allow that to make you criminals. يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ. It comes from the word jurm. Jurm means crime. Don't allow that to make you a criminal. In what way? That you don't practice justice toward the same people who have violated you. When we are violated, we are upset at a person, at a people, that is a recipe for a context for us to act based on emotions, based on feelings. Oh, you said this, I'm going to do something to you. What is that something that I want to do? I don't care. I just want to do something to make me feel good. They made me feel bad. I want to get back at them. But did God say you're allowed to behave that way? I don't think of that. How far are you going? All right, there's certain guidelines in terms of how you behave and what justice, what bringing to justice is. What rights do you have? They did something wrong, but are you going to do something wrong toward them? The Quran says, be careful. That context of being mistreated, if you're not careful, shaitan will take advantage of that, get under your skin, and make you do something wrong against them. The Quran gives us the story of Habil and Qabil, the earliest crime that we are aware of mentioned in the Quran, crime of two human beings against one another. There is that sin that the Christians refer to as the original sin. In a sense, it is the original, meaning the first time a human being went against what God said. But the first violation of the right of another human being, the murder of another human being, is Qabil murdering Habil. In that story, God says, which is, I believe, also in Surah Al-Ma'idah, or at least that's one of the places that the Quran talks about this. God says, quoting Habil and Qabil, Qabil said, لَأَقْتُلَنَّكَ, I will kill you. Habil, the good brother, he's seeing that this guy is his own brother, is saying that I'll kill you, I'll take your life. Habil says, if you're trying to kill me, in basatta yadaka litaqtulani, if you're extending your hand to kill me, you're using your strength to kill me, I'm not going to do the same. Not that I'm not going to defend myself. That's not what he says there. Don't misunderstand those verses. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to sit here, do whatever you want. No, so I'm not attempting to take your life at all. So that's one of the things in America you see in these Hollywood movies, and it's there, and you see it from the cops all the time. Like, oh, you even thought of killing me, or you had a weapon. I have a right to shoot 15 bullets in you. You trespass. You got close to me. I have a right to kill you. Habil says, if you're trying to kill me, I'm not trying to kill you. I'm not attempting to kill you. I'm not interested in killing you. All right. When you feel, oh, this guy wanted to kill me, oh, I'm going to kill him. Well, if he didn't kill you, then you don't get a right to kill him. But when we are caught up with our emotions, feelings, and we aren't able to see things right, and we will transgress, that is violation of the right of another person. It doesn't matter that they violated you first. You can't violate their right. You can only practice justice toward them if you're allowed to get back at them, if you are allowed to force them or make them compensate for the wrong they did, then that is justice. But for you to go beyond that and do what you feel you want to do toward them, that is injustice. The Quran says, when you are violated by someone else, by another people, don't allow that to make you into a criminal by you violating their right. The concept of justice is found in the Quran in so many different verses, so many different chapters, and it's an absolute value. The other word that we have is qist in Surah Al-Hadid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in fact, we sent prophets and we revealed books upon them. For what? لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ, so that people rise in justice. Rising in justice by the people is for everyone to implement justice in their own personal life and to help each other practice justice by doing tawasi bil haqq, by reminding each other if they see someone is moving toward going against justice, acting unjustly, violating someone or some justice in some form, either it's the right of another human being or it's the violation of the guidance and the guidelines of God. And those are all forms of injustice. God says, we sent these books to present you with and provide you with the guidelines so that you take it and you all together collectively rise in being just, going based on these guidelines. So this being an Islamic concept is very clear. That's not something that we need to spend a lot of time explaining. What I want to say is that what the state that we are in today in the world, on the topic of justice, on the topic of wanting justice, justice being accepted as a value, not just in people's minds, not just that, oh, you like justice for yourself, because everybody likes to be treated well. Nobody likes to be violated. That's always been there. But What hasn't been there is for people collectively to want justice for everyone. What hasn't been there is that when George Floyd is killed in a city in America, the rest of the United States of America, people are rioting on the streets against this ongoing injustice against people of color. Okay. And not just African Americans, because George Floyd was an African American, but these protests that sometimes turn into riots. And of course, the rioting part, the looting part, none of that, that's an example of what the verse of the Quran said, don't do. Don't allow others violating your right cause you to violate the rights of others. Don't do that. Don't help each other violate each other's rights. No. The rioting part, the looting part, that's not good. But the anger that was created or people had when they saw that injustice led them to protest. Come out on the streets. Protest against police brutality. Who were these people? Were they only African Americans? Or one of us was? No. There were people from various backgrounds. There were white people there. There's Latinos there. When there's injustice that occurs in Palestine, this is a very good example. When Israel attacks Gaza, you have people across the globe that recognize that injustice, see it for what it is, and they rise against it. They protest against it. Not the elite media. Those, obviously, they are with the Zionists. They are the tools of the Zionists to form public opinion, to fabricate public opinion. But the people who recognize the truth is otherwise, they have worked hard in presenting the real story of what's happening in Palestine. And so you have a lot of people now on a global scale that are against the Zionists, that are against the Israeli aggression. And they don't just think that way, they act that way. When you have an outbreak of violence of the Israelis against the Palestinians, you will see thousands upon thousands of people, hundreds. I remember once, this was in 2008, in Washington, D.C., in front of the White House. There were over 100,000 people gathering outside of the White House, and they were not Muslim. The dominant majority of those people, over at least 80% of the people, were not even Muslim. And they had traveled from other cities. They had paid for their own travel. Nobody compensates for that payment. There's no lobby that is going to pay for your ticket to come to DC to protest. They paid out of pocket to come and protest the violence of the Israeli regime in front of the White House. This is what we mean by justice becoming a global value accepted by people, where they are willing to sacrifice for justice that is not even about taking something for themselves. It's standing up for justice for other people. People had uprisings, or they had protests against the apartheid regime of South Africa, where they didn't even live in South Africa. There was global pressure against the apartheid regime of South Africa. There's global pressure. People throughout the globe protested the very existence of the apartheid regime. Just like right now, the slogan that those people were chanting in Washington, D.C., I was very surprised. They didn't say, oh, we think that the Israelis should have, we go with a two-state solution and they get to live there and the Palestinians get to live. No, they said from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. This is their slogan. These are non-Muslims. They're chanting that. We have reached a state that is unprecedented in history, where an injustice happens on another continent, people thousands of miles away stand up for the people who are oppressed. This is being implemented by so many people. It's become a global phenomenon, a globally accepted value, to the degree that the tyrants, the rulers, the elite, they've got to lie about the truth. They have to lie about what is happening. The oppressors. People want to stand against the oppressors. The oppressors find it necessary to feed lies to people, to pacify them with those lies so that they don't rise against them. They're very careful of people. People have gotten very strong. The oppressors have to be mindful that when they wanted to go to Iraq, these are examples I'm throwing, when they wanted to go to Iraq, they had to sell a lot of lies. And then when people realized in America, it was clear to them that they're lied to. You have military personnel, soldiers, generals, I don't know about generals, but officers, and the public rise against that, speak out against it. Even though some of those outlets spoke out against it for political reasons, those are media outlets, they had political motives, but the language they spoke to appeal to the masses was the language of justice. They weren't genuine about the want for justice. They had political incentives, but the language they used was a language of justice. Why? Because people want that. The next value that has become global, and we don't recognize this as an Islamic value, and I would have liked a little more time to explain this as an Islamic value. And I will actually not talk too much about this being a global phenomenon. I think that part is clear on this value. I would have to spend a little bit of time explaining that this is an Islamic value, not a Western value. Don't misunderstand. That is democracy. Democracy is a Greek word, or originates in Greece. The word does. The concept doesn't. I'm going to clarify that. There's no such thing as a Greek democracy. The word originates in Greece. The implementation of that democracy, that's a myth that there was such a thing in anywhere in Greece or anywhere else. No. Democracy is an Islamic value. The word that we use in English is originally or comes from Greek. That is true, that the word comes from Greek, but that being a value, that being a teaching that the Greeks had, no, the Greeks were always led by tyrants, and they don't have an era where there was an actual democracy. Democracy is only possible with religion, with Islam, and with leaders in power that are Muslim, not just nominally, not just identifying as Muslim, but rather their behavior, their thoughts reflecting Islam, impersonating Islam, figures that are personifications of, impersonations of, manifestations of Islam. Only those leaders can lead a democracy. Democracy is an Islamic concept. Ayatollah Khamenei mentions this. A book has been published from some of his lectures, and I have not found there to be a good translation of this book in English yet, at least. I'm not aware of it. I hope there is. It's called the Insana 250 Sale, or the 250-year-old man. There is at least one, maybe two translations. One of them is very poor. The other one that I think I've heard, there is a second one that is not as poor, but I don't know of a good translation of this book. In that book, in the Farsi version of it that I have read, he mentions this, and I was almost shocked when I read it. I had to, again, go back and do my research in the Islamic sources and put thought into it to see what he's saying, and then realize, oh my God, I've missed this. So many people have. That what he says is so true. What does democracy mean? Let me clarify this. And what does it not mean? I'll start with what does it not mean. Democracy does not mean whatever people say is right. Democracy does not mean you take a vote on whether LGBTQ should be legalized or should be considered marriage. Men should be able to marry men. And if they vote for that, then that becomes acceptable. Democracy does not mean that if people vote for Joe Biden in the US, then Joe Biden is rightfully the leader of the political leader, the legitimate political leader of the United States of America. God gives him power. Why? Because people voted for him, and we're saying Islam is teaching us democracy. No, that's not what democracy means. That's a lie as well. That's liberal democracy. Liberal democracy says that there's no value except for what people want. All right. So if a religion says something is of value, that means nothing. If people adopt that, they say, because they're not even true, they're big liars. They're not those who claim to lead liberal democracy, which is basically the United States of America. The ones who claim they are the forefront of that is the United States of America, the government of the United States of America. They're big liars. They don't actually believe in liberalism. They don't believe in democracy. But to clarify this, democracy has nothing to do with whatever people say to be true. That has nothing to do with that. Democracy means the rule of the people. That's all democracy means. And that is valuable. That is an Islamic value. People governing themselves is an Islamic value. People being in charge, taking charge of their own governance and making decisions regarding that mindfully and carefully. Making correct decisions. People are responsible for their own future. And people must make decisions regarding their governance, and they must make correct decisions. That is the value of democracy. And if people don't want to make that decision, or the people don't want to make the right decision, then those amongst people who know what the right decision is and have presented the correct decision to the people don't support it, then you who know the correct decision are not supposed to, it is wrong for you to force them into that. It's wrong. While what you are pushing them toward is right, is good, is justice, but they don't want it, they don't support it. If they don't support it, you forcing them to act based on that is injustice. It's wrong. So what democracy means, we said what it doesn't mean. What it means has two folds. One, it is the responsibility of the people themselves to govern themselves based on what's right, to appoint a leader, a ruler from amongst themselves who is more knowing of the direction of justice and more capable in implementing that knowledge of theirs. It is a responsibility of the people to do that. That's one fold of it. The other fold is, if people don't want to do that, it is wrong to force them to do that. That combined is the Islamic, or that's the meaning rather of democracy in itself. And that is what Islam values. That is what Islam says. What's the reference for that? I've already provided one reference. The Quran says that we sent these books we sent prophets and we sent the books with them. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. We sent it so people rise in justice. When we said it's two folds, people have the obligation. That's one fold. The other is that if they're not willing to, if they don't want to, you can't force them. The part that they need to rise is clearly found in this verse. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. That's not the only reference. There's other references for that in the Quran as well. For the other part of it, that if they don't want to, if they're not willing to even do the right thing, because if they don't want to do something wrong and they're forced into it, that's clearly, that's very clear that Islam is against that. If the US government is forcing its own people, or any government, to move in the wrong direction, Islam condemns that. That's clear to everyone. The part that is less clear is that if the people are being told to do the right thing, they're being told to do what God says, they're being told to act according to justice, but the people say, we don't want that. Islam says it is wrong for you to force them to do that. Where does that come from Islam? Where does that come from? That comes from multitudes of references, instances of this happening. In the Quran, God says, Musa was told to tell his people, you need to go and fight the oppressive forces in the Holy Land, in Palestine. When they crossed the sea, from Egypt, they went to Palestine. They hadn't entered that area of Palestine that they were told to live. They were in the deserts and the mountains. They were told that they need to go. There's an oppressive force there. You need to fight them. God will give you victory and you will establish your government there, the government of justice that God wants you, that later on Prophet Sulaiman, Prophet Dawood, they established there. When the people supported, they established it there. They were told to do that during the time of Prophet Musa. But when Prophet Musa introduced that idea that God says, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to govern yourself, And this is how you need to govern that area, and you need to help the oppressed people of that area by fighting the oppressors in that land. You believe in God. The other people who are oppressed, they haven't gotten to that point yet, but you are. You do know what Musa tells you is from God. You're instructed to go and fight the oppressors. So this was the right thing to do. When Musa introduced this and told the people, what did the people do? The people said, no, you can go and fight them. Inna hahuna qa'idun. We're going to sit right here. What did Musa do? Musa went to Allah and said, oh Allah, it's only me and my brother. These people are not coming. He didn't grab a stick or, I don't know, his staff that could turn it into a snake and start throwing it at people. You better get up. Get your weapon up. Get your rear end off the ground. You just crossed the sea. How dare you do this? I told you to go and fight. He introduced the idea. He said, this is what we need to do. When everybody said, no, we don't want to do that, Musa went to Allah and said, I only have myself and my brother. I don't have anybody else. There's no one else that's willing to fight. Amir al-Mu'mineen is another example. Amir al-Mu'mineen was the rightful ruler and leader after the Prophet. The Prophet made it crystal clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, for everyone. Nobody had any doubt. Today there's people that don't know what happened, but the fact of the matter is that the Prophet made it crystal clear that after him it would be Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. After the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi passed away, Amir al-Mu'mineen is involved with the burial of the Prophet, as he was told. Others went to Saqifa, and you know the outcome of Saqifa. Some people pledged allegiance with someone the Prophet had not said. They didn't, after they had already pledged to Ali ibn Abi Talib, when the Prophet told them, now they're going against that. After Amir al-Mu'mineen was done with the burial, he went and spoke to the people multiple occasions. This is what we're supposed to do. This is the right thing. There was Ghadir. Fatimah-uz-Zahra salamullahi alayha did the same thing. They spoke to the people and spoke to the people and spoke to the people. The only people that showed support, there's one in Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to the doors of the companions and asks for 40 people because there was a coup. There's long, I can't explain the whole thing, but there's a lot of details there. But in one account it says Amir al-Mu'mineen was looking for 40 people that were willing to come forward and deal with the oppressors, because the people had already pledged allegiance with Amir al-Mu'mineen. These guys were orchestrating a coup. It's a small number of people that are going against what the Prophet has said. The others are just simply silent. To deal with the oppressors with the few, he just needed 40 people to join him. 40 people failed to show up. They agreed that they would show up 3 nights in a row. During the day that they were supposed to show up, they failed to show up. Another instance says Amir al-Mu'mineen went publicly, this time not knocking on the doors, publicly in the masjid of Rasulullah. He addressed the people and he said, Wallah, if I had as many warriors as there were in the battle of Badr, which were 313, I would take and I would bring to justice the people that have done this wrong and correct this wrong that is happening. It says that 360 people came to Amir al-Mu'mineen in the masjid and said, we're with you. Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is an example. People need to want it. Amir al-Mu'mineen did not want them to join him because of a hype. He's just delivered a fiery sermon and they got excited, 360 people. They came to him and said, we're with you. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, okay, tomorrow, not right now, tomorrow at this time, at this location. He gave him a place, a time and a place. If you're actually interested, you want to join. I said 313, you guys are 360. All right, come tomorrow, this time and this location. 5 people showed up. Amir al-Mu'mineen told the people multiple occasions, this is what you need to do. People showed they don't want it. What did Amir al-Mu'mineen do? Did he take out his Dhul Faqar and say, you guys better line up, give me those 360 people. You said you're going to come, get out of your homes. Let's go and fight these guys. Line up here. No. They need to want it. They didn't want it. Ali says, you won't have it. The Imam of Amir al-Mu'mineen continues. He is the Imam. He led the people. But governance, that God considered him the legitimate governor, yeah, that was the legitimate thing to do. That was the right thing to do. When people didn't want it, the Prophet told Ali, if people support you, stand against the oppressors, the ones who were taking and violating this teaching of Islam. If people didn't support, don't. And plenty of other references. This is an Islamic value, and you can see that the world now is accepting this. Now, there are misunderstandings related to this as well. They are promoting liberal democracy. All the negatives aside, and those need to be noticed, but right now that's not our focus. To see that the world has come to a point where even the oppressors have to convince people, because people are involved in their own governance, and that is seen as valuable. And people have been involved with multiple revolutions throughout the globe, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, in South America. Uprisings from people to take governance in their own hands. People have given blood for that. That is an Islamic value that has become global. In history, that is unprecedented. We've never had that. Kings and queens, rulers have been able to rule and do whatever they want, wipe out entire villages, families, whoever disagrees with them. The A'imma were killed in broad daylight, slaughtered in broad daylight because they opposed the government and the wrongs of the government. Nobody did anything. Nobody joined them. Nobody considered that something to do. Very few did. And now we're seeing what we're seeing. It needs to be seen, and then there's practical things that come out of this that inshallah we'll talk about tomorrow. Inshallah, bi'idhnillah. Sallallahu alayka ya Mawla ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Mazlum. أيها الشهيد بكربلاء عطشانا. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. My beloved Imam al-Hussein. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you. My beloved oppressed Imam, the Imam who was slaughtered by the Euphrates while his mouth was dry of thirst. on the day of Ashura, after the slaughter of the Ahlul Bayt, there was a little girl in Karbala who just lost her father. Instead of being respected, instead of people trying to soothe her pains, instead of at least being left alone, the Mal'oons chased after her. They saw her pretty earrings in her ears and ripped out her earrings. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون يا حسين.
I'm really sorry to interrupt you, Kumail, but we're having issues with the audio again. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. On Ashura, by Allah, will never forget you, Hussein. For you I cry each day and night, my tears on dry. Ya Zahra, will never forget your Hussein. For you I cry each day and night, my tears on dry. Ya Zahra, will never forget your Hussein. Hussein Karbala, Hussein the martyr, O son of Zahra, Hussein our master. For truth he did stand, in he gave all he had for the sake of Allah. He gave to be answer now. Please be upon you, O heart of Fatima, and I'm sure but will never forget you, son. For you I cry each day, tears on dry. I will forget your son. For you I cry each day, my tears won't dry. Ya Zahra, I will never forget your son. Hussein's flag bearer, Zainab's protector, to quench all the thirst. You went for water. His heart starts to fall. He looks for Sakina. He fell from his horse. How he acted on the sand. Above just one thing we can understand. How did you fall when they taken both your hands? Please, peace be upon you, O martyr of Karbala, on Ashura, in Karbala, Fatima, by Allah, will never forget your sin. For you I cry, each day and night, my tears won't dry. Ya Zahra, I will never forget your sin. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Thank you, Brother Kamal, Zohair and Burair Kazmi as well, and of course Zuri Abbas for your contribution. I urge you to join us again tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. at the same time for this Majlis. Until then, we'll see you again. Allah Hafiz.